Welcome to the Westside Barbell podcast. Today's guest is Ali Kennedy. Ali, thank you for coming in. We wanted to get you in here to talk a little bit about Pro Lacrosse, how you ended up at Westside Barbell, and to get your input on your strength training over the last 8 weeks. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of what you're doing here, can we get a little bit about your background and how you end up playing lacrosse from a young age all the way up to where you are now?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me. I got my start in lacrosse because I grew up on Long Island, or in Long Island, New York, and that's a hotbed for lacrosse. Lacrosse is a huge sport there, and I'm the youngest of three, so my oldest sister played lacrosse. She was the first one, and then my brother also played, and they both went off to play in college as well. So I grew up being dragged around to their tournaments, their practices, and then just being around the sport completely. I started when I was 5 years old. I actually played for a boys team because my town at the time did not have a girls lacrosse team established. And then my dad started the PAL program for our town and coached me and my friends till we were in high school. So I just grew up around it, and then went off and played in college, and here I am now.
How did you get from high school to college lacrosse?
Well, I was pretty under-recruited. I think through my college career, I definitely obviously improved, whether that was coaching or my teammates or just my work ethic and stuff like that. But I played on a high school team that was, although Long Island is a hotbed for lacrosse, my high school is not great. We were 3-13 one year. We had a ton of girls who are my closest friends now that went off and played D2 and some D1 schools, but we weren't a super powerful team. There are dynasty teams on Long Island that win state championships and stuff like that. We were not one of those, so that definitely hurt my recruiting process. But I was recruited by Stony Brook, where I eventually went, the Naval Academy, Ohio State, I think UMass or something like that. But those are really my options. And then I chose to stay home and go to Stony Brook.
What was that transition like, going from high school lacrosse, having a tougher recruitment than others, and starting at Stony Brook?
I mean, it's an adjustment everywhere. From the speed of the game, different style of coaching. I went from a high school team where it revolved around me to now being a freshman and trying to find my way and not always have the ball in my stick and being the one to make plays. It was almost I had to be a little bit more humble and grind and just work my way to the top. So it was a huge adjustment physically, mentally, and then just the skill of it all. I had to improve so much, while also being a student on top of it. I feel that's things people forget about.
What'd you study?
I got my degree in business management with the concentration in marketing, and then I got because COVID happened and I took a fifth year, a grad certificate in coaching, and then my master's in liberal studies. Okay. So I'm well educated.
What are some of the big takeaways you got from Stony Brook going into pro lacrosse, and how did that even happen? How did you go from college to becoming a pro women's lacrosse athlete?
Yeah, pro lacrosse wasn't an option until 2018. My junior year, that was the first year. It's called the WPLL. It was trying to follow the same structure as the men's professional league. And once COVID happened, that completely folded. Those women weren't making a lot of money. They were actually, if their games carried over into the men's time block, the games were stopped. They were not treated very well. But they weren't making enough to, fight for those things.
Yeah.
It was just an opportunity to play, and that's all we were looking for at that point. And then when COVID happened, like I said, it folded, and the whole world pretty much shut down. So it was almost well, what's going to happen? Is my only opportunity to play after this just to be the national team and like representing my country, which is so hard to make and so hard to do. And then Athletes Unlimited came out. It's a company that has 4 or 3 other professional sports of volleyball, basketball, softball, and now lacrosse. And that started in 2021, and that was my graduation year. And so I've been a part of it ever since.
How did you graduate and get into this? Was it a draft, or how did you get selected to be part of the AU process?
So it's super interesting because my first year was the like inaugural year for everyone. So technically like everyone was drafted.
Gotcha.
But I think it was just the player pool from the previous league of those veterans that have been playing were pulled into it. And then there was a draft where I was selected 2nd overall.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Can we get into how many different aspects of lacrosse you're actually a part of now before we go into the strength training?
Yes.
Because you're not just part of AU, you're part of national team. I'm not even going to try, so can you please explain?
Yes. So I'm a part of Athletes Unlimited. That's the professional side of things. Get paid to play. An opportunity for a broad spectrum of players. And then there's the national side of things, the national team side of things. And there's 3 different disciplines for the national team. So you can pick one of 3 to play. You can pick all 3, or, you know, some never have the opportunity to play in any. So I realized how lucky I am to be in all 3. But there's regular field, international field lacrosse, women's lacrosse. It's a big field, 3 different positions: defense, midfield, attack, on a regular lacrosse field that you see like in college and stuff like that. Same amount of rules. I mean, same kind of rules. A few differences here and there. Like there's no shot clock. There's a shot clock in college and stuff like that. And then you have box lacrosse, which is in an indoor ice hockey rink, essentially, with turf on the ground. Way smaller goals, like way smaller than a hockey goal. Fully padded. You have like the helmet, elbow pads, like equipment I've never had to wear before. And we play with a men's stick as well. And that's full contact. You can do stuff that is typically illegal in field lacrosse. And now you're just like unleashed in this like full contact side of sports. And that's brand new. This is the first year it's being played on the women's side. Men's side, it's been around for a long time. So it's actually really cool that I'm a part of, we call ourselves Team 1 because we're the first women's box national team for the U.S. And that has a competition coming up in September for the World Games. And then there's the sixes discipline, which is the discipline going into the Olympics. And that's on a shorter field, bigger than a box field, regular size goals, no position. Everyone plays everything pretty much up and down. After you score a goal, the goalie literally picks the ball out of the net, and it's just like going the other way. So it's like, it's almost like basketball in a sense, where you just are like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, nonstop. It's a mix of, if you took box lacrosse and field lacrosse and just like mashed it into one, that's what sixes would be.
What is interesting, because we have been thrust into the world of women's lacrosse with you and male lacrosse with Justin, and now lacrosse has taken over the office. We have the stick you gave us, and Harold, myself, and Mac, whether he admits it or not, are now just trying to slam balls everywhere. But for you as a pro lacrosse athlete, you guys are not yet at the point where you can make full-time salaries off it. So to make ends meet, what is your job alongside your full-time career?
My full-time job is I'm an assistant lacrosse coach at Ohio State currently. And before that, I was a coach at Virginia. So, yeah. I mean, it's cool to see how dedicated these women are to the sport that they play and love, because it would be so, like, I wish lacrosse was my full-time job. I mean, I treat it like it is. It's like my whole life pretty much. But how nice it would be to just be like, oh, all I have to do today is focus on being a professional lacrosse player. But it definitely gives me a better appreciation of like how much dedication, not only like am I putting into it, but like every other woman that's in the professional system. Like, we work our asses off between maintaining shape to play lacrosse at a high level, but like also making enough money to like live.
How did you, was there just the opportunity at OSU for someone who's a home bird and loves Long Island? How did you end up at OSU?
So I was at Virginia last year. I spent most of before that I was at Stony Brook where I played. I was like a GA. That's when I got my master's. And then an opportunity called from Virginia, and that Virginia's in the ACC. It's a really top-notch conference for any sport, but especially women's lacrosse. And for that to be like my first actual paid assistant job, I'm like, I would be so stupid to turn that down. So then I took that job, had that for a year. That coach, who I love so much, and I talk to her still, decided to retire after 30 years of coaching, which I can understand. The Ohio State job opened up. Mandy, my boss now, got the job, and like I was her first call when she saw that the Virginia head coach was leaving, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to take this chance, not only because, you know, it's Ohio State and it's a great resume builder, and like who says no to Ohio State, right, for a job opportunity, but I'd say the ACC is a good conference, but I think the Big Ten is the best lacrosse conference there is. So to be able to coach within that and, you know, be around that level of lacrosse all the time is not only inspiring and challenging, but like it kind of keeps me in the game even when I'm not playing.
Having all the different disciplines of lacrosse you play within, does that help you as a coach?
Yeah, I think it keeps me pretty up to date. I think it's so easy to kind of get dated in women's lacrosse because it's changing so fast. Like when my sister played, there was no out of bounds. Like you could just run forever until the ref was like, all right, like come back. And then there was like no restraining line, and then there was no shot clock. Like my freshman year in college was the first year of the shot clock. Like there was a point in time where like if the whistle blew, like you had to stop. There was no free movement. You had to stop exactly where you were. No matter if like you were wide open on the offensive end with the one-on-one with the goalie and like a defender like was like you had to stay. It was bizarre. Like talking about it now, I'm like that game is so different. So just being able to play in all different disciplines helps me as a coach stay up to date, but also like bring ideas into, like since I coach the offense, you play offense differently in box lacrosse, in sixes, and in field. So it keeps me like young in the sense of just like learning from, because as I age, like the players coming in are now younger than me, so I get to watch what they do from their programs and stuff like that. And I think it helps me a lot.
So you're at Ohio State, you're a coach. Well, let me give you the listeners and the watchers the backstories. You've been training here for 8 weeks at Westside Barbell. And before we go into the experience of being at Westside, being an athlete at Westside, go through some of the ups, some of the challenges, and leading into your season that starts very soon. What made you want to reach out to Westside Barbell?
I had a pretty good, when I say pretty good, like I knew what Westside was. Like my dad bought, I think I was in high school, like bought us the matching shirts, the gray like weak things break, and he's like, he's like all about it. Huge Westside fan, huge Louis fan, like in the 80s, like he was all about that, and like that's what I grew up around. So then when I moved here, he was like, yeah, I'll help you move in, but like my priority is visiting Westside Barbell. And I'm like, okay. Like I didn't even know it was in Columbus, Ohio, but like that's really cool. Like go see it. And obviously like you can't just look it up. So he drove around like a madman and found the gym, which is kind of impressive because he was dedicated. Found Mac toured my mom and dad around, and I mean he brags about me a lot, which I love.
Go dad.
Yes, and he was talking probably Mac's ear off about like professional lacrosse player. I'm on the national team, all that stuff. I coach at Ohio State now. And so that connection happened. He came back and he's like, yeah, you should really like reach out. But like my prior knowledge about Westside was like powerlifters. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't do that. Like haven't benched in so long. Like I cannot just be like, hey guys, I don't want to work out at this gym. Please let me. And then, so I just like got my feet under me with my new job and everything. And then another family member came to visit, and he has the same love for Westside. So he said the same thing. Like, obviously, him and my dad talked about, like, when he came here, he visited. So he's like, okay, cool, I'm going to do the same thing. Ran into Mac again, and my cousin, like, brought me up. And he's like, oh, yeah, I remember her parents talking about her. So then my cousin got Mac's email, and I kept the email for a little bit. And I was like, am I going to do this? And then lacrosse was pushed forward as an Olympic sport for the 2028 Olympics. And like, I just got hit in the face with like realization that what I'm doing right now is not going to get me to the Olympics. Like, I need to change something. I need to get uncomfortable. Like, I need to push myself. So then I sent my initial email, didn't hear anything. And truthfully, my dad was like, if they don't answer, like, send another. That's what they want. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So my first email, I was like, yeah, my dad's a big fan. And then I read it, and I'm like, oh my God, I kind of played this off like people want me to do this. So my second email was like, I want to do this for myself, which I think now, knowing me, you kind of understand.
Yeah.
Understand the double email.
Yeah, your email was definitely different than most applicants. So the second one, and literally it was like, just basically give me a shot. This is what I want to do. You had an objective. I think I told you this, but Justin made such a good impression to us about lacrosse athletes that we're like, oh, like this is a sport that is just coming on our radar, and we're getting slightly obsessed with it. I'm like, okay, timing is good. And then from your first walkthrough, I guess the formal, informal interview, like, okay, and we wanted to start training female athletes. And we're like, this is, the timing kind of matched up real good. Knowing you now, it all makes sense. Of like, if there is 10 disciplines in lacrosse, like you're going to do all 10 disciplines and train for all 10 of them at the same time. But can you go through what was going through your head your first day here and what you expected from it? And I'm going to preface, like, you came in here better than most athletes because you had an established training background. I think your dad had briefed you what this place was. But what was it like walking in here the first day, and what were your expectations?
I think when I first walked in, I was expecting to have like a good understanding of it all, and like my strength, and like I'm like, yeah, whatever they throw at me, I can handle, sort of thing. And then 2 weeks in, just being like absolutely humbled and being like, oof, like my ceiling is really high, but like I'm nowhere near what I'm capable of. And I think that was really exciting, but I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be intense. I think what I was expecting was not to have the sort of like coach trainer, like athlete relationship that we have. I like really appreciate that about you. Like, that's like the type of athlete that I am. Like, I love to connect with people, especially people that like are pouring into me. Like, I want to be able to give that back by like performing, and then like that's with my numbers here, and then obviously in my season like doing well. But yeah, I was kind of like expecting to be like, well, if I don't do well, like they're just gonna be like, okay, nope, you're done. But that wasn't it at all. Like, I don't know if it was because you saw potential in me or something, or I just like refused to go away. But I quickly found out what my limits were, and then like how to uncomfortably push through them. That was like the biggest thing of like, whether it was trying to bench 25-pound dumbbells for 12 reps, like 10 through 12 were going to be the ugliest things ever. And my arms are going to feel a way that I've never had them feel before. But it's exceeded all expectations in the best way possible.
I guess from a coach's standpoint, I can go through why we're like, oh, you can keep coming back. And I said this to you at the start, you're similar personality to our athletes. I think you're around some of the guys to go, there's that competitive aspect of like, I just want to be better, and whatever you can do, I can fucking do better. Excuse my language. But you're process driven. And I mean that with as much respect possible. And having process driven means you get really good feedback. And maybe it's because you're a coach and an athlete, it allows you to take instruction, and to acknowledge instruction is important to get. Because your first week here, or your second week did not look like your first week, and the third week did not look like your second. To your last few weeks, everything is like you were here for months. And we can get in some of the most memorable moments of your first week here. But in 8 weeks, you've achieved a huge amount of progress. And within those 8 weeks, it wasn't just straight training. You had trials to go through, different events. So it was, and you had recruiting in between that. So it was an inconsistent 8 weeks. But we've got PRs in 2 out of the 3. We wanted to get PRs in. Huge increase in volume density, which we've increased it by 100%. So what you did in the first week, you were doing 100% plus in the last few weeks of your training. So given that short space of time, we've got some pretty good results. What changes have you felt physically from that?
I mean, I could obviously, like, I feel stronger. But I think what is so beneficial to my sport is like my aerobic capacity, and that has changed dramatically and improved significantly to where like you run a lot in lacrosse, and in any discipline, no matter the length of the field, like being fast and running for a long time is super important. And I never thought like strength training and doing these really, really hard, intense workouts like with dumbbells and all the accessories and stuff was going to be the thing to improve that. I always thought like, let me get on an end line of a turf field and just kill myself until like I'm heaved over and just dying. And I used to go for like pretty decently fast, like mile-long runs to like train for that aspect, but I haven't done that in a long time. I'm in like physically the best shape I've ever been in. So that is just at 26, because women's lacrosse is like, if you're not right out of college, like you're 80 years old, it seems like. So being 26 and being in the best shape of my life because of these workouts is what I've noticed the most. And then like my body physically, like I've always had a good amount of muscle on my body, but I feel leaner and definitely more toned. And like I know I can't, but I feel like I could pick up a semi-truck. Like I feel like a unit right now.
Did that catch you off guard? Because we don't run here. Was that hard to adapt to and to get your mind around, like, wait, we don't have to run, but I should get better?
Yeah, because like that was every gym I've ever been to is like, yeah, there's days to lift, there's days to focus on lacrosse, and then there's conditioning days. And I remember the first, like one of my very first days here, like we were doing sled walks, and I'm like, all right, where am I sprinting to? And you're like, no, you're not sprinting, you're walking. I'm like, oh, okay. That caught me off guard, and I was like, there's no way. Like I'm gonna have to run on my own and do stuff, but that's not the case. Because if I did stuff outside of like what we do here, I would be fried all the time. And those dynamic effort days on Tuesdays those are literally the days I work the hardest ever in my life. And it just, oh my God. I'm like, I know I keep saying it, but I'm definitely in the best shape ever because of those days, and continuously, like as those workouts get harder, like I'm getting better and just pushing myself through uncomfortable situations. Like my heart rate is constantly above 180. Like it is so impressive. Like I impress myself when I finish those workouts and I'm like, whew, that was really hard. I just did that. And I'm like, now I know running is going to be easy.
I feel you're prepared for the max effort days, the Tuesday or the Thursday and the Saturdays. I think definitely with your dad, like that was, and like, yes, of course we're gonna lift heavy. The Tuesday seems to catch everyone off guard, not just physically, but mentally. It seems to recalibrate. Oh, I thought I was working hard. I'm not saying you weren't, but now you're like, oh, I can do so much more. And the progression of where you first started on a Tuesday with a very quick onboarding. How do you feel the dynamic of a combo day attributes to the mental side of your training?
I think it's everything. Like mentally, I remember that one of the first like dynamic efforts that we did. I'm like, psh, easy. It was like, and it wasn't easy, but like there was sprinting involved. So I'm like, oh, I got this. And then it was like the hamstring.
Inverse curl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is like, I could do this every Tuesday. And then it was just like, the next week we did the same workout, but it was way harder. And I'm like, okay. And then the week after that was something new. And I'm like, oh my God. But it just helped me mentally know that like, one, I'm working hard for a goal, like push through, push yourself. Stopping is not an option unless my health is at risk. But like being able to push through adversity and like challenge myself on days like a Tuesday in the middle of my work day it's a lot of fun. And I love it. I've told you this before, like on Tuesdays I pull up to the gym and I'm like, my heart rate's like elevated. I have like butterflies. Like I feel like I'm about to play a game. Like I'm about to step on the field and play a professional lacrosse game. That's how I feel on Tuesdays when I'm in here. And then like once we go, I'm like, this is it. This is gonna suck for 40 to 50 minutes. And when I'm done, I'm gonna feel great. But it's helped me almost like recalibrate my brain and be like, I can do really hard things, because once I was no longer a college athlete, I got into a routine where I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to the gym and like push myself, but like not kill myself. Like I'm gonna do what I'm really good at and that'll be enough. But now I'm like, nope. Every Tuesday I'm mentally and physically going through it. And then when it's done, I'm like, I'm unstoppable.
To see your progress, obviously as a coach, is huge. To see how you change when Ashley came in as a training partner, like that was another change of like, it's very important to have someone there to go through, I guess, this bit of adversity with, and also the guys groups and comparing times of like, well, what time did you get finished in? And that brings up the question, how did you like, or did it strike you anyway odd that we train female athletes the exact same as male athletes?
No, I love it. I think it's great that, like you guys mentioned, before we do any workout, like you guys do it first. And then like, obviously like the men come in and they do it. And then Ashley and I do it. I love it. I think, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for female athletes, and like I can do things and like advocate for myself and be like, I'm just as good as an athlete as, you know, the men are. And I love beating their times on Tuesday, and that they're pretty invested in what time I get. I think that's awesome, but that's also like the culture of this place. Like I'm competitive, but I know the guys on the other side are also just as competitive as me and like want to be the best in everything. But I think like training an athlete as an athlete, not switching it up because of gender or like because I'm a female athlete, is the key. And like what I've been used to my whole life. Like when my brother was going through playing high school sports and all that stuff, like my dad would bring his friends in to train and do stuff with them, like whether it's going to the field and doing speed work, like, and my brother's 5 years older than me. So like these guys were like through 15, like from the ages from 15 to 20, they were all training together. So I was like 10 to 15 doing exercises with boys that then ended up being college athletes, like men, and like never thinking anything of it, and just like kind of being like, yeah, this is what I do. Oh, my brother and his friends who are 20 years old are going out in our street and doing strongman like workouts. Here I go doing them with them. Like this is really normal. But I think that just added to the competitive edge, and I think it helped me like succeed here in the competitive aspect as well.
For sure. It's the environment plays a huge part of what we do, and being able to objectively have data on how strong you are and based off percentages is huge, because that means someone, and Louis said this thousands of times, but if someone squats 1,000 pounds and you squat 500 pounds, you can train alongside each other because you're using the same percentages. We just shook it up a little bit on dynamic effort we wanted to ensure athletes paid enough respect to the density required to carry over the sport. And moving to the 3-day system has been huge for us, and to see it carry over to every athlete so far is huge. And the level of individualization for every athlete's training becomes easier because we can quickly see the weaknesses that need to be worked on, and they can be done in separate workouts. And allowing the culture and group to grow has been huge. Been huge for us as coaches. Has made everything very interesting, having all the different sports. And in talking about sports, the gym, the culture, training here is great. It's important, but nothing's more important than the performance in what you do. So from weight training, from what you've done in the last 8 weeks, have you noticed any carryover to how you play lacrosse in a non-skill set, but to your physical attributes in the game?
Yeah. I mean, other than like lung capacity, like when we this past weekend had a box lacrosse training camp, and there's not, since we're the first national team or like established team of women who are playing box lacrosse, there's not any other full team of women who also play box lacrosse that we can play against, unless like it's another country. But you know, it's so early on, I think, in the process that like we don't want to play any other countries right now, like give them a hint of like what we're doing. So our coaching staff signs us up to play in tournaments against men, full pads, same rules. Like it's an adjustment, but like from the fall when I wasn't training here and still going to those camps, like I was getting tossed around as expected. Like this guy's 6 foot tall, 200 pounds. Like, yeah, I'm going to get shoved to the ground. But like, even if I gave a hit, like it was like nothing. Yeah. This weekend, like a guy tried to lower his shoulder into me to like get to goal. Like I did not move. And I like was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't move. And I think he was kind of like, what the heck? And then like being able to like off ball, like hit someone or like give someone contact and like see them react to it when like that wasn't the case prior. Like I am just harder to move. I'm harder to like deal with. I'm just like stronger overall. I think my presence is felt more in that sense, especially like from the physical contact aspect, which then like allows me in field, there's less hitting, but it allows me when there is one, it's going to be way less significant than what I was just dealing with. And then on top of being stronger, like I could take a hit and run by it, no problem.
Does it allow you to display your skills more, or does it have any transfer over to that aspect?
I think so. I think if you're stronger, you're faster, and you're getting yourself free more. So like the second I'm free, that's when, you know, my lacrosse skill kicks in, and like I take a shot or I do some sort of dodge, or like my hands are free, I'm shooting, I'm passing, like then my IQ gets to be shown off because I'm creating more opportunities for myself because I'm more physically prepared for situations. And like, not saying that I wasn't before, but I'm definitely more aware of it now of like, oh my God, that first step was so quick that like they don't even have a chance to cover me right now. Or like I can, again, take a hit and not be worried about like falling over, but take a hit, absorb it, stay on my feet, and like almost see through it to make the next play.
Did you expect that?
No. I thought it was just gonna like strength training make me stronger, and like I'm just gonna be the lacrosse player that I was or am. But it's really cool.
How does Tuesday's workouts, the level you're at now, compare to a game in terms of exertion?
I think Tuesdays are harder. Because, like, there's times, like, in a game, especially if it's professional, like, the hardest part is when I'm running 100-yard sprints. And then if I'm on either side, like, I have a few seconds to catch my breath. And, like, I also think mentally, like, I don't know what's coming in a game. And, like, that kind of keeps me on my toes. And, like, I can set myself out, like, if I need a break. But on Tuesdays, like, I see the torque tank lined up. I'm like, oh, no. Oh, no. And, like, you're going for time against, like, when I go against, like, Dante and Miles, like, I'm like, I need to beat their time. And the only way to do that is, like, not stop. So, I mean, that was, like, the thing in college was, like, practice was always going to be harder than the games to make the games feel easy. And I feel like that's exactly what Tuesdays are. Like, Tuesdays are going to suck. But, like, when I'm on the field, I'm going to feel like $1,000,000.
And that's what a part of it's what we're trying to do, and I think everyone gets that. I think everyone's just taken back by, I can't believe how much work I'm getting done, because it started at 75 minutes, and then we broke sub 60, and then we broke sub 50, and now we broke sub 40, to where it's just watching the guys this morning, they were just trying to weigh up, like, should we actually keep breaking these times? Because now the training has to get harder. We're going to do way more in 60 minutes. So they're trying to come up with strategies of, like, maybe just beat it by 30 seconds. But the great thing is all of you are pushing the boundaries of what can be done in a single workout without screwing up form. I think that's what a lot of people think of. Like, well, you can do anything if you do half reps. But everyone here is so competitive, they don't want to get called out for missing a set, missing a rep, doing or even doing a half rep. So that's been pretty cool for us to see. And our style of coaching is we'll stay on the peripheries and only get involved if we have to. What are some of the most memorable aspects of training that comes to your mind over the 8 weeks?
There are definitely some crazy situations that I got myself into just because of, like, lack of experience and stuff like that. I think, like, under the squat bar, I almost died. The bench.
Almost died.
And then, like, the box jump.
Died.
Almost died. You actually almost caught me. That was memorable. I also think just, like, I don't know, I love the hard workouts and being like, look at what I just did today. And knowing that they're only getting harder, like, there's a part of me that's like, like, yikes, but also, like, let's go.
I want to give context to almost died, so people are like, what happened was when Ali came here, she had a strong foundation in training, and she gave the illusion of, like, oh, she can take really big jumps in terms of weight. For the squat, we started off with the safety squat bar to just below parallel box, hit a quarter, no problem, put on a plate, no problem. And we're like, oh, she can do a quarter plate jump. And went from a plate to a quarter, and Ali went down at the speed of light, and then that was it. Her body did not respond. Thankfully, you were able to just about hold it. We got the spotters over and we lifted it up. And similar happened in the bench. And you think, I would learn my lesson the first time, but I give you the benefit of the doubt. So that's one for you and one for me on errors.
I did do this, like, I've almost died on the squat. Saved myself. The spotter saved me. But then I went under again with the same weight, and I did do it. Maybe not perfect.
Yes, you did.
But I did do it.
I appreciate that clarification. But you forget how you have a pro athlete who is well established and well decorated in your sport, and that skill level, it doesn't translate necessarily into the training age of the weight room. And to see the jumps you did and get to about set 6 where, like, okay, We're going from set 5 to set 6. The jump wasn't logical, and your body wasn't ready to strain at all. But within 14 days, now you figure out, okay, I got to strain. Back to you being process driven. You could see your form having the checklist of like, okay, here's my feet, here's my position. You know when you unrack the bar for squatting, okay, here's where I am in space, here's where the box is. And to see you go through those checklists, like, oh, okay, I know that if the worst case happens, you at least know where you're at. And there's not going to be this dump into, I don't know what is the closest thing I've seen to a fetal position in a squat ever.
I folded.
Oh, like a deck of cards. And of course, the spotters was Justin and Joe. Justin was up and going, and Joe, who is a pro firefighter, I'm not saying anything about pro firefighter, but Joe, the reaction time of Joe was like, oh, I think she's, oh no, I gotta go, was like pretty slow. But to see the difference in you in 14 days is huge, and it kind of recalibrated us as coaches that, oh, we have to make sure we get the feedback on point. And with any new athlete, is to establish, okay, what feedback do you want? And you're all go. I guarantee we put 3 plates on there. Like, let's do it. And that's like any new coach athlete relationship, is to establish the feedback loop, the boundaries of, hey, this is as far as I can go. I can't go any further. Usually, you have to push people, but for all the athletes we have now, it's like, no, you know, take the weight off. I understand you want to go, and it's to give some sort of throttle back. So that's been really interesting, but it adds to the fast or the quick pace of the PRs you've got here. Since you are part of this new professional sport, how do you see it evolving, and how do you see the strength training part of it evolving with what you know now and with what is there?
I think my hopes for women's lacrosse is to obviously take off. I think it's on a good path right now of like gaining popularity and, you know, people actually like investing into the athletes that they like to watch, and stuff like that. And like, hopefully there's more than one opportunity to play in a couple years to come. We're like a bigger league where like now finally, like my hopes and dreams is to be like, I'm a professional lacrosse player and that's how I make my living. Yeah. Like that would be.
You see that happening?
I hope so. I think it's going to take a little bit, just because I like the men's side of it isn't fully there yet either. So I feel like once, like since it's our brother sport, like that, getting to that point would help us. Just because I think once they get there, then they'll get to a point where like that league wants to now raise up the women's side. They have been pretty great about including some of the female lacrosse players and stuff that they do, but they're not at a point where they could support both sides of it. And unfortunately, if something needs to get cut, like it's always going to be the women's side because they're a men's professional league first. So like totally understandable. So we'll be in this individual league until our Athletes Unlimited can continue forever. That would be great too. So girls have multiple options to do besides like hopefully like crossing their fingers to get picked for a national team opportunity as well, which you don't get paid for, but like you don't need to get paid for. Representing your country is like the highest honor. So hopefully multiple leagues, multiple opportunities, and like a way to make a living is my goal or my hopes and dreams for women's lacrosse, because it is a sport that I think deserves to be at the highest level. And then like I think strength training comes into that because as a professional athlete, you need to do all you can to get an edge on any of your competition, to continually better yourself. Like there is a point, like, yes, you should have your stick in your hand. You should hit the wall. You should shoot. Like you should do all those things. But like as a professional, you're only really improving those by like a very slight margin every time you go out or like every time you practice. But the way to make massive improvements physically, I think, is through strength training and like being in the weight room. Like if you don't lift and you go up against someone who lifts, like, there's a difference, especially in female athletes, I think.
Being on the national teams and being a pro lacrosse player, I'm sure you have aspiring athletes looking up to you and wanting to be in your shoes and having, like, you're right, the greatest honor you can have is representing your country in your sport. What would you say to them on the experience you've had up to this point of how to set up that road for success to becoming a pro athlete?
I'd say, like, I mean, lacrosse has changed so much. Like, even since I was being recruited, there was obviously, like, camps and stuff that you could do, but there were 1 or 2 events per year that you could do to be, like, recruited outside of playing on your club team. I think now, like, these girls are doing so much focus on lacrosse. Like, throughout the week, they're doing camps, and then on weekends, they're doing tournaments where they play multiple games in the heat of Maryland, like, for 2 months at a time. I think, like, going off that, my advice would be, and I think we experience that here, like, when you are so focused on one thing and it's consuming all of your time and all of your, like, day, you lose appreciation for it, I think. And then, like, you get so hyper fixated on it that you don't see positive in it anymore. I would suggest, like, yes, if it's your recruiting year, do all you can to get the exposure. But on your off season, like, don't overload yourself with lacrosse. Don't strain yourself so much with lacrosse. Like, start lifting weights. My experience at Stony Brook was really eye-opening in the fact that once we went to the gym, that was a lot of girls' first time getting under a barbell at the age of 18. And putting yourself in that stress in the weight room and on the lacrosse field, and then, like, even in the classroom, like, that all wreaks havoc on you. And then, like, there's a lot of injury in women's lacrosse, especially, like, with knees and stuff. And I think the way to prevent that and almost, like, make yourself a balanced athlete, not just a lacrosse player, is by starting and lifting weights and, like, getting that foundation. I think the foundation I had, and I will give my dad all the credit in the world, to put me through crazy workouts and all that stuff. Like, I knock on wood again because I'm superstitious. Like, I am very lucky with the amount of injuries that I've had. And I say this to the girls who do get knee injuries that take a long time to recover from. Like, you go in a professional national team huddle, whatever, you scan every girl's knee, there's some sort of scar, either on one or both. Like, there's injury in it all. And I think the way to prevent it is by being strong and lifting weight and, like, getting your body used to movements outside of lacrosse, because bracing yourself for impact or contact and stuff like that, like, just having lacrosse muscles isn't gonna give you the stability you need.
What are your short-term and long-term goals for lacrosse?
My personal short-term goal would to be right now is to, well, what's right in front of me, have my best professional season, be, whether it's, like, individual performances and stuff like that, like how I feel physically, just making sure I'm, like, almost hitting the ground running at the right time for this season, because it's 5 weeks long, 3 games per weekend. Like, it requires a lot.
How does that feel to where, when I try to digest the AU league, it's so intriguing. The point system is so intriguing, and I encourage anyone to go look at the website, look at the points, because you just don't get points added on. You get penalized for doing stuff incorrectly. So you have that, and then been away for 5 weeks. How does that feel like, to where, like, you were away from everything for 5 weeks and then your whole league is done? Is that kind of gets you mentally like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff, or is it because you're you and you have got 3 other things afterwards? But back to you, how does that feel?
It's intense. It's definitely an intense environment. 3 games a weekend or a week is challenging, and like being away for 5 weeks is also challenging. But like, I don't know if many of my other peers or like teammates will agree with me, but like when this is now my 4th season, so like as soon as I step into the hotel that we all stay at or where they put us, and like I'm on that field, like something switches in my brain and I'm like, it's season. Like it truthfully might be harder for the girls coming out of college to be like, oh, season's usually 3 months long. Like, no, girl, season's 5 weeks long, and you have 28 games in this 5 weeks.
Wow.
Like, buckle up. Like it's like you have to flip your brain a little bit. But like, it's an adjustment for all. Like from high school to college, adjustment, college to pros, huge adjustment. Especially AU, because you're not on a set team. You're pretty much fighting for yourself. But in a good way, the way to get the most points is through winning. And you need everyone to win. So it does encourage a team aspect of it as well. But like at the end of the day, like where you're based on that leaderboard based off the points you acquire from what you do in the game, is mentally. Sometimes I'm like, don't focus on the points. And other times I'm like, I need to focus on the points. But at the end of the day, I love lacrosse. I just want to play lacrosse. And any opportunity, as you know, that I have to play lacrosse, like I'm going to do it. But it's a lot. It's the only opportunity. I get paid for it. I love it. I'm not going to be super greedy. Yeah. And like it gets us visibility. We're on ESPN. Like, people love watching it. So, I mean, as long as I'm still playing, I'm still healthy, and get to call myself a professional athlete with the sport that when I was 10 years old didn't have a professional league, like, I'll take it.
What is Mac, Harold's, and myself experience going to be like going to a pro lacrosse game? Is it spectator friendly? What is it like?
I think it's spectator friendly. It's actually kind of hilarious. Well, they play music in between goals and stuff and like timeouts, and there's like someone there that's very interactive with fans. There's a DJ. Like, it's very fan experience friendly. There's a tent. You could buy stuff if you want. I think you can use my code there as well.
Oh,
I'll just have to ask what it is. Especially if you guys show up in all your shirts. But it's hilarious in the fact that like there's sound effects. So like if I turn the ball over, it's I think this year like -5 points from whatever my score is. And then you'll hear the DJ go womp womp. And I'm like, great, not only did that hurt because I'm losing 5 points, I'm like, now the whole stadium knows that. Like, or like if someone shoots a really wide shot, they'll play a clip where it's like that just a bit outside or something. Like it's a very interactive experience. And then they play videos of us on the scoreboard, like asking questions and like, you know, like those like emoji quizzes and stuff. So it's fun.
It's an experience.
It's an experience. And I think I don't really watch games because I'm
in them.
Yeah, in them. And when I'm not in them, I'm usually in the locker room waiting to play my game. Yeah. But then they sometimes like throw a player who played in the game previous in the stands with a microphone, and like they go around asking questions as well. But it's the only thing I have a problem with is halftime is 15 minutes long, and that's a pretty long halftime.
We'll find something to do. We got it. When the season is over, I guess the real question I want to ask is, the Olympics is 2028.
Yep.
That is clearly the goal for most, if not all, athletes, being able to represent their country and get that gold medal. America been a powerhouse in lacrosse. There's going to be a lot of competition. The fact, knowing you now, it makes sense why you're prepping, but do you anticipate, is it going to be hard to stay focused Or has this been such a dream of yours that you just can't wait for it to happen? I guess, yeah. Can you stay focused without getting sidetracked to 2028?
I mean, I better. Like, not that I'm not giving myself an option, but to think about it being so close, like, it's like right there. Like, truthfully, anything that I do right now, because the Olympic trials are going on, like, once this Summer Olympics concludes, like, we're up next. So in the lacrosse world at that time, I may be old, but if I keep doing what I'm doing here and like pushing myself and staying in the best shape that I've been in, like, it's, to me, the only way I don't make it obviously is like if they cut me, because maybe hopefully my skill's not there anymore. But like it's not going to be because I physically cannot compete. But like watching the trials and like watching these track and field athletes running, and the people who are in fourth that like miss it by like a tenth of a second, I'm like, oh my, I can't imagine your Olympic dreams. Like, you're not in the Olympics because of a tenth of a second. Dagger to the heart. So that's how I'm taking it, because it has been a dream, and it hasn't been a dream just because it's been introduced into the Olympics or like pushed as an Olympic sport. It's something that's been in the talks for like a while. There's a interview out there where I say like, it's the year 2028. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm retired with an Olympic gold medal. It's been right here in the forefront of my mind for a very long time, because that's the ultimate goal. I mean, winning a gold medal in the World Championships for Team USA was another goal that I had, and like accomplished that. Like, I just I want to keep pushing and going until I reach like the ultimate goal, which I think is representing your country in the Olympics. I mean,
who wouldn't want that?
Who wouldn't?
Well, I appreciate you taking the time on your down week to come in here and talk to us. The first air game of your season is when?
July 15th.
And on some part of ESPN?
Yep. I think all ESPN platforms, they change weekly, whether it's ESPN Plus, ESPNU, ESPN2. So.
Ali, it's been a pleasure, and can't wait to chat to you after your season.
Yay, thanks.